Three Demons Book 2, Chapter 23, The Rogue Monster. Ava and Kitsune found themselves a place to rest after spending hours traversing the passageways of the ruins. Ava going in and out of deep thought after reading the hieroglyphs on the wall revealing the events of Excalibur after the death of King Arthur. Ava is still trying to wrap her head around the revelation of Brachiel's presence among the fallen angels. It was as if something didn't feel right about it. "It's still on your mind, isn't it?" Kitsune asks her, breaking Ava out of her trance once more. Ava nods. "Yeah, I can't tell what it is, but something about Brachiel and the fallen angels looking for Excalibur seems off." Wouldn't the higher-ups among the other races know something was off if an entire race was deciding to do something like this? Ava bites the tip of her thumb as she continues to think on the subject, as Kitsune chimes in. "To be frank, I don't believe I even know who leads the fallen angels. It could just be a bunch of rogues going against what their own leader would do or say." Ava gasps. That would mean... As Ava began to respond, clapping could be heard from the shadows. A large figure comes from the darkness, his hair dark and patchy, nails embedded into his body like Frankenstein, wearing a brown trench coat and dark jeans. "It seems as if you actually figured it out. I'm impressed. But Lord Brachiel isn't going to be happy if I just let you live." Ava and Kitsune quickly get to their feet as they ready themselves for a fight. The large man standing in front of them begins taking off his trench coat, revealing a muscular body that's been tethered by scars, staples, and bolts. "Since I'm going to be the one to kill a member of the Hajime demon family, I might as well show my respects and give you my name. They call me Braun Clerval. Pleasure to be your executioner." Braun tells the two as he smirks at them, a clear murderous intent being seen behind it. Braun charges at the two with incredible speed, something a man of his stature typically isn't seen as capable of doing. Braun throws a right hook at Kitsune, an attack of which she was barely able to block, using her arms to take the brunt of the attack as she flies backwards, using her feet as friction against the floor to keep herself as balanced as possible. Ava's body began glowing in blue aura as she prepared an attack against Braun, summoning several torrents of scalding water as they fired at Braun, the impact of which hitting him directly in the chest as it knocked him backwards. Braun stands himself back up, the skin on his chest lathered and burned as he just looks up and smirks at Ava, leaving her stunned as her attack seemingly had no effect on him. Kitsune suddenly appeared next to Braun, using her speed to catch him off guard as she landed a right-handed jab at the man kneeling next to her, her fist pushing deep into his face beginning to sink in from the punch itself. However, he remains kneeling there with Kitsune's fist implanted into the side of his face. Braun then grabbed Kitsune by her small arm, his giant hands wrapping around the entirety of her small arms as he throws her like a rag doll against the ruined floor, her body skipping across the floor like a stone before Ava catches her friend, leaving her open as Braun appears before the two once more, forming a ball of lightning in his hand as he fires it at the two, pushing them back as they bounce off the wall. Ava is left sitting against the wall, Kitsune lying on top of her as she struggles to make any movement at all, her body paralyzed by Braun's lightning attack. "This really is a shame. All that talk I've heard about this group and you go down as easily as flies. How dull." Braun mocks Ava and Kitsune as he grabs Ava by her head, lifting her off the ground as Kitsune hits the floor, left to only helplessly look up at the two of them. Braun slammed his fist into Ava's abdomen, a shockwave being created by the force of the attack, causing Ava to begin coughing up blood as her ribs snap and pierce into her lungs, becoming harder to breathe. "Damn it, I let my guard down and now..." Ava thinks to herself as Braun lands another punch into her abdomen. Blood begins to pour out of Ava's mouth like a river. Braun smirks. "I think I might have crushed something. That's quite a lot of blood there." Ava just looks at him with a blank, murderous-like stare as blood continues to pour out of her mouth. Her normal blue eyes begin to change color to a crimson red as they glow. The blood that has been dripping onto the floor begins to float upward. "What the hell is this?" Braun asks, looking around and above him as blood begins to fill the area around them. Ava grabs onto Braun's arm, gripping tightly as large, blood-covered blades stab out of Braun's arm suddenly, causing him to drop off as he succumbs to the pain from his lacerated and hole-filled arm. Braun glares at Ava as she spits something out of her mouth, causing Braun to widen his eyes in shock. You bit your damn tongue off." Once the shock went away, Braun smirked in excitement. This is actually going to be fun. A pool of blood surrounded the two as Braun makes a mental note that the amount of blood around them shouldn't be possible. So this is the power of the Hajime family's forbidden knowledge. Braun exclaims as Ava rushes towards him, using the blood around her as a whip as she slashes Braun across the chest. The blood whip being as sharp as a sword itself, maybe even sharper. Blood begins squirting out of Braun's chest like a geyser as that sick and sadistic smile only grows. His eyes burn with the fire determination as electricity begins to visibly travel throughout his body. Ava begins channeling her arcana into her hand, the blood droplets within the air condensing around her open hand, forming razor-sharp shards, and with a swift motion she flings the blood shards at Braun, creating a web of deadly projectiles. Braun roared in pain, anger, and excitement as the shards penetrate and cut into his body. However, it seems as if the pain is only making him more determined as he rushes towards Ava. As Braun barrels towards Ava, the blood surrounding him begins to grab and pull at him. However, Braun, fueled by his determination that could seemingly defy reason itself, snaps the blood-like restraints in half as he grabs Ava by her face and slams her head against the wall, cracking it in the process. Blood then begins to climb onto Braun's arm like a living slime as Ava's murderous-like gaze never left her face. Braun pulled away quickly before the blood could get a good grip onto him. However, a cage of blood forms around him, trapping him despite his attempts of using brute force to get out, slamming his fist against the cage repeatedly. The cage then begins to protrude spikes from its insides, forming something akin to an Iron Maiden as the cage begins to enclose around Braun. As the cage begins stabbing into him, a surge of electricity fires off around Braun, seeping through the cracks of the cage as the chamber around them begins to light up brightly. The huge surge of electricity shatters the cage around Braun as a bright yellow glow surrounds him, electricity pulsating throughout his body. He continues to smirk at Ava as he lunges towards her. Ava forms a wall of blood to protect her from Braun's attack. However, Braun pierces through the wall, the blood surrounding the area dropping back down to the ground as Ava's crimson eyes return to her normal shade of blue. Braun lands his punch onto Ava, bashing her head against the same wall as a small crater is formed around her head as she is left unconscious. Are you serious? All that power and you can't manage to use it for a long period of time? Talk about a waste of my time. Braun complains loudly, kicking Ava's unconscious body out of frustration. Braun lifts his hand into the air as he forms another ball of electricity. However, the heat emitting from the electricity in his hand is beginning to turn the dirt, clay, and dust around the chamber into a steamy, thick, magma-like substance. Before Braun is able to finish Ava off, Kitsune forces herself onto her feet and throws herself at him, planting a kick into the side of his head, catching him off guard and forcing him to stumble slightly. I almost forgot about you. Stubborn little thing, aren't you? Almost like you were a chihuahua. Braun mocks Kitsune as she stands her ground, breathing heavily, still being affected by Braun's previous attack. Braun cracks the knuckles in his hands, his body glowing even more in the electric arcana. He charges towards Kitsune, unleashing a devastating attack. Kitsune gritted her teeth, bracing herself as Braun planted an attack against her, electricity transmitting into her body. Kitsune then grabs onto Braun and navigates his attack downward, jumping back out of the way as the attack shakes the ruins around them. Kitsune continues to breathe even more heavily, making it very evident she is pushing herself past her limit. Braun then suddenly appears before her, ramming his knee into Kitsune's body as she coughs up blood onto his knees. He grabs her limp body by her head. Braun smirks and begins to squeeze her head tightly, with whimpers being the only thing being able to spill from her mouth as she lacks the energy to do anything else. End of Chapter 23.